I think this brings me to something that both of us would love talking about. The entire stage where you try wanting more and more users to use your product, where you give it out for free, and also building POCs for free. What are your thoughts? Because it's always a gamble, right? It's a chicken and egg for us. We want as many users to use it, use our product, give us feedback. But there is a certain threshold beyond which we all believe, people being in the SaaS space, that there should never be free lunches, right? So, what has been some of your learnings on this entire conundrum?
Yeah, I don't like free. I like free, but I don't like giving free. So I tend to stay very much away from free items. See, my fundamentally, the way I think about it is, if they are not willing to put their money where their mouth is, are they actually interested in the product? Is it a pressing enough problem for them? If it is not a pressing enough need for them, will they ever pay, or will my product ever fly? So for me, it is a customer validation issue. If it is a real problem that I'm solving, and if my product is adding real value, then people should pay. People will pay, is my default thought process. So if somebody is not willing to pay, I would actually stand back and say, am I selling something valuable at all? And so I just go back to the super fundamental of a product market fit question. If it is a product market fit product, if I know I'm adding value, why the heck are they not paying? I am okay to build out a pilot for 2 months, but that is only with the agreement that at the end of the 2 months, if we satisfy these three things, it will flip into an annual agreement. And that annual agreement can be 90% discounted. I don't care. But there has to be a dollar amount that they are signing up for. Without that, I will not do a pilot. Especially in the Indian market, people really like to have pilots, right? We have walked away from several deals, like huge companies, right? Huge companies, 800 million revenue company in India. They are obviously global with 800 million. Everyone knows the company. I'm not going to say it. And these guys want to use Incent. And they said, we did the negotiation. I came down, right? I came down. I'm like, this is a good logo to have. It's fine. Let them take it and go. Their marketing maturity is not that high. In general, Indian companies' marketing maturity, except for the top 10 or 20 companies, it's not that high. So I'm like, okay, let us give it. And then they started negotiating at a level where, like, they wanted to have 1 month free trial, 2 months. Like, you know what, guys, you have $850 million. We are talking about $8,000 a year. If you cannot do it, don't do it. Like, don't buy. I actually send an email saying that you are negotiating for this dollars, right? Don't do it, right? So my suggestion is, if they are not willing to do it, go back to your drawing board and really see if you have product market fit. If you really know there is product market fit and others are already paying the money and they are getting value out of it, and there are still a couple of people who are not willing to pay, have the balls to walk away. It is much better not to do bad deals than having a bunch of bad deals lying around, right? If you do, like, imagine do 4 months pilot time, right? And then at the end of 4 months, if 4 of them walk away without paying you anything, when you take that to an investor, the first question they'll ask is, you had 4 pilots with these amazing companies who have a lot of revenue. Why didn't they pay you? You don't have any answer to it. It might be because the other guy is an a-hole, right? But doesn't matter. You don't have an answer to it then. So it is much better not to do shitty deals earlier. Walk away and do only quality deals.
So, Arjun, what I'm going to do is, before we move to the next topic, I'm just going to summarize a few very important points that we had the last 10-15 minutes, right? So, one, never do anything free. It's good to set a high dollar value and give even up to 90-95% discount, for a certain set term, right? But do not peg anything free, because then it gets very difficult to move on. So that's a very, very important point. Being on the other side, interestingly, that's something that I would also vouch, right? It's very, very important, especially when
you are on the corporate side, right? So people from your side, you would push, but you will also take pilots, right?
Very true, very true. And I think it's very important to also respect, the effort, right? So, and the thing is, especially with large corporates, something from the inside that I can tell you is, once you open the account with the first dollar going out, large corporates do not like working with multiple vendors, right? So that is a very, very crucial part. Till you keep giving free, you're still you've not opened the account on certain accounts, right? So the minute, even if it's $1,000 pilot, push for the $1,000, right? It need not be a $50,000 value. Even if it's $1,000 pilot, push for it, because there are certain amounts of paperwork that you have to go through, and like you rightly said, corporates don't like the monthly billing, right? It's simply because they don't like going through the unnecessary paperwork. And this is a classic example, right? They do not have more than one or two vendors for the same use case. So good to open an account. So on that count, I think a couple of very interesting points that came up. One, no free lunches. It's fine to give up to a 90-95% discount and give it at a low value, but do not give anything free. So that is one. Second is your point on monthly versus quarterly versus annual, right? Cash is king. Try always getting all the money up front, but try understanding your customer really well, right? If it's an SMB, they're not going to have the cash flow, right? They're not going to be liquid. It's always better to go down and go on a monthly basis versus your enterprise clients. Try understanding how the customers are. And I think the third point on the model itself, right? Look at your costs, understand your costs, and it's not just the cost of building the software, but it's also the ongoing costs, right? Setup costs are one. It is also the support cost that comes in. Stay on top of what those costs are. Second is check your competitor pricing, but do not base your pricing based on your competitors, because that's a huge amount of assumptions that you're talking about. And third is how much value, right? I think what is the value that you're really bringing, which is your entire ROI approach. Your tool may be very less cost for you, but is it having a great amount of efficiency or effectiveness for the client, right? Is it value based $100,000, and hence he's ready to give up to $5,000 for saving $100,000, right? So that entire value-based pricing is something that was a beautiful point that you brought in. Which is where it reminds me of something that we keep talking about, which is your customers don't really care about your costs. It's about their costs that they really consider.
Yeah, pricing. One beautiful thing, I don't know where I got this, but this is very true. Pricing is never a function of the cost. Pricing is always a function of perceived value, right? And the best example is Apple, right? Think about the premium at which Apple is selling their product, because the perceived value of an Apple product is very high, right? And that is probably because of the quality of the product. But again, we also know that we are probably paying $200 more than we should, right? Like Samsung is selling something at $650, probably because of the quality we are okay to pay $800, but we end up paying $1,000 to Apple because the perceived value is high, right? So never do your pricing based on the cost. Always do pricing based on the perceived value from the other side. If they are perceiving more value, you have the leverage to increase your pricing. Never leave. Again, initial days, somebody is also asking, in the early days, don't be worried about doing free, trial and error. So if you go to Insent website today, there's no pricing, and that's by design. In the early days also, we didn't have pricing. So I would literally go into a call and I would say X dollars, and I'll look at their face. What are they thinking? Is it good or bad? And are they pushing back? And then I would go into the next call and say X plus $200, something like that per month, right? X plus $200, and I'll so I would do that trial and error on every call. On a given day, 5 calls, I have given 5 pricings. And when I did that over 20 calls, I kind of started identifying the pattern. When I crossed the threshold, people started pushing back. So initially, some of the deals I left money on the table. Some of the deals I got pushed back, and I figured out that, this is probably that sweet spot. Right? I am probably at a 10% plus or minus 10% in that sweet spot today. I'm sure that there's probably a little bit here and there wiggle room, but that's how I figured out the pricing.
No, I think that's a very interesting point, Arjun. Right. So that's exactly what we were talking right at the beginning of the session, where in your initial days, keep being flexible, keep iterating your pricing. The value that you arrive at, because you never know what is the right pricing, right? And your last point on perceived value, I think that is beautiful, because just going back to the point we made, it is always the value that you're bringing to the customer, and how much he's ready to let go, or how much is he ready to keep aside to receive that value that you bring, right? Because he is never bothered about what does it take or what cost does it take for you to bring that value. It is only about what cost does it take for him to receive the value that he gets. So I think that was a beautiful point in terms of optimal pricing itself.
So there is one question, Gautam, from Ashish, that he asked, how do SaaS software marketplaces earn money? So I want to actually connect a little bit about, we started talking about how we shouldn't give free and all of that, but also there is a point where, what if you are building a social network, kind of like a LinkedIn, right? If that is happening, then you have to give it free for some time. Now LinkedIn is kind of getting into a SaaS pricing model. They have LinkedIn for recruitment, LinkedIn for this and that. So there are exceptions to the rule that we were talking about, where you need a certain level of network effect to kick in before you can start commanding SaaS pricing, right? So in those cases, you should go free for a given amount of time. At that point of time, your growth is your lever, right? You need to optimize for growth, right? And connecting that piece to Ashish's question here, how do SaaS software comparison marketplaces earn money? So Ashish, I don't know exactly the SaaS-worthy case. I have to go and look. But in general, the marketplaces make their money through sponsorships, the events that they host, and the ads that they run. Right, those are the three big ones. And they also, from time to time, these marketplaces or content publishers will come up with some reports, like State of Marketing Report 2019. If you want to download it, you have to pay $4,495. So there are also those anecdotal, like different auxiliary kind of models. A lot of the marketplaces were only dependent on ad-based revenue, but that is changing very quickly into other kind of SaaS things. A lot of their money can come from conferences that they host, whether it is virtual conferences or offline conferences. That could save them a lot of money too. So it's a little bit of many things that they are bringing together to get their money.
So Arjun, we are heading towards the end of the session, but I think there's a very important piece that I wanted to just touch. Segmenting the user personas or your customers. You did mention briefly that in your initial days, keep coming up with numbers that you think would work. Look at the responses, see if there's a pushback or there's a quick yes, and that allows you to move the dollar the next time that you take it. But how important has it been to segment your I think there was one example where I said break it down into as many features as possible. I think that example came in for the Indian market and SMBs. So that is where we tend to come up with different segments of models or different bases of pricing, right? A standard one and then a premium, right? So how do you how important is that, and how do you approach something like that?
Yeah, very, very, very relevant and important question, right? Like, I think there are multiple aspects to it. Let me talk about the pricing packages a little bit, to your point, right? Factors and slicing and dicing. I think it is very, very important for the product company to understand the value levers that the customers are perceiving. So in a product, there'll be several levels of factors, right? Or several features, let's say like 10 features. But out of these 10 features, there'll be like a 2 or 3 core features, right? Like, and that core features point to different use cases also. You are essentially buying that product for one thing, but inside that thing, the product can do multiple things, out of which there will be 2 or 3 which are very crucial, right? Now it is up to you to figure out how to move some of these features into a new package, so that somebody getting in at the base package will move into the second package. I'll share an example, right? Dropbox is like their core feature is what? Storage. That's all. So they would give you 2 GB of storage for free. That is okay. I don't think it's 2 GB now, but whatever. they give 2 GB for free and you start using it. You get to a point where you're hooked in. And then the more power users would want to advance from there to the 10 GB plan. And they moved the 10 up to 10 GB into the new thing. Right? Slack's case is up to 10,000 messages is free.
Right.
But the next thing is that is similar to Dropbox, but there is a Slack. There are multiple levers from which Slack will move over, right? If you want to invite a guest to a Slack, then you have to upgrade, right? So if you are working with contractors, then you will have guests on your Slack, right? You don't want your contractors to get access to your whole Slack, right? And then if the use case came up, you're like, oh my God, I have contractors now, and now I have to have guest channels. For that, I need to upgrade. So it is very important for you to understand the features and then slice and dice the features in a way where people can get started and move over to your next packages.
Right.
People call it gating factors, right? That is the idea. So you should always know what are the gating factors that your product should have. And while it is interesting for you to look at your competitors' gating factors, don't follow those gating factors. Because if you shuffle the gating factors a little bit, you can have a very interesting pricing model differentiation with your established competitor. If they are pricing it based on number of seats, you should say, okay, forget number of seats, everybody can come onto my platform. I'm going to do it based on monthly visits or monthly messages, not on number of seats, right? That could become a strong differentiator for you to get a lot of customers versus, number of seats. So also that is why I said initially that, pricing model could be a very strong differentiator also. So be very careful in identifying your gating factors first, and it will take time. It's not like the first month. It'll probably take you 6 months to find the gating factors, right? Once you figure out the gating factors, have different packages, and then it is super important for VCs when they look at it, right? Ideally, they want to see companies with different pricing packages, and ideally, they want to see companies with without touching the customers. The customers should be able to. The customers will upsell themselves. I'll give an example. ChargeBee does, they get a commission out of the money that they are processing, right? If I make $1 million, ChargeBee makes X. If I make $2 million, ChargeBee gets X plus X, right? So ChargeBee account executive need not be in touch with me at all. The money that ChargeBee is making is going up, right? Zero touch lever. That is a VC's dream, which is why ChargeBee just paid $55 million. Outreach. As you add your SDRs, you have to add outreach seats. Outreach does not need to do anything. Outreach or any sales engagement vendors or Salesforce, these are all zero touch expansion. So if you can move people from one package to another without touching, if you can keep upselling without touching, you are in holy grail. VCs will pay a premium for that.
I think, Arjun, two very important points. One is get your gating strategy strong. So and the other part is try breaking it down into features and club based on metrics that matter to your customer. Right? Do not focus on metrics that matter to you, but focus on metrics that matter to your customer and play around with the optics. Right? It could be per seat, per usage based, time based. So many things could come out once you identify metrics that matter to your customer. So I think that was a beautiful point because it opens up a lot of possibilities for us, right? So one final,
Gautam, before that, maybe you want to quickly answer some of these questions. I can take a minute and probably answer these questions.
Yeah, sure. I think we should, I think what we'll do is we'll quickly take Sankalp's, point, right? Sankalp and Shaurya's point, right? So I just wanted to bring it in. So Shaurya's point mainly is around, and Sankalp's point is on geography based, right? So a lot of them are building from India for the global market. And something that a lot of us on this call will face is my potential customers could be spread. It could be LATAM, it could be NA, Europe, Africa, and the perceived value will differ. From geography to geography, right? So how do I position and how do I position it on my pricing page being SaaS product? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you should absolutely have different pricing, and it is totally fine to have different pricing for different geographies, right? It is totally based on the ability to pay as far as those companies are concerned. So I think you should customize your pricing for different markets, and we have enough experience, right? Hotstar started in India; they have a different pricing for India, different pricing for Singapore, different pricing for US, right? Netflix, same thing, started in US, they have in India, it's a very different pricing. So you should absolutely have different pricing based on different geographies if that is needed. But having said that, I would also recommend early startups and products to focus on one geography, because that would also impact your go-to-market, your marketing, your sales, and all of that. So just be also mindful that attacking multiple geographies at the early stages of the company might not be that good. But if you are validating it, yes, feel free to play around with the pricing, feel free to play around with everything. And to Sankal's point about customizing a SaaS product for a customer for a lump sum versus focusing on acquiring more customers without changing, I would always lean to the latter, which is focusing on acquiring more customers without changing the product. Especially in Indian market, people tend to say that, hey, if you add this small thing, I will buy. If you add this small feature, I will buy. They won't buy. Right? Don't bother about it. And in many of the cases, and this is Gautam can also probably talk about this, right? When you go and speak to a big company, they will always try to make you edit the product for them.
True.
Right? But that you can do a certain level of customization, and that's fine. I would say, if I'm trying to put a percentage, right? Ideally, I want to do like a totally nothing. I don't do any customization. You take it as it is, right? But in the early stages, it is probably, if you can keep to that 70% or 75% where you are not making changes, and then there is like a 20% where you are adding a feature or you are reprioritizing something on your roadmap, that is okay. But if you are doing something as a services for a custom, that's bad. Again, from an investor perspective, every time there is a services component, your valuation will decrease. A true B2B SaaS company can get 8x to 20 times the revenue multiple in terms of the valuation, right? It could be like 5 to 20x, but around that 10x range, let's say. 10 times your revenue is the typical valuation that you would get for a B2B SaaS company. But if you are a services company with a whole lot of professional services, you are thinking about 3 to 4x of your revenue. So the valuation will get deeply affected if you are doing lump sum amounts and doing one-off work for companies. So, and that reduces the predictability, that reduces the true SaaS features. Don't do it, and the product will get bloated, right? The product will get really bloated because you did a few things that is very specific to that particular company. If you want to do a B2B SaaS company, do a B2B SaaS company. Don't do lump sum amounts. If you want to build a services company, sure, yeah, knock it off. That's fine.
So Arjun, because you mentioned valuation and VCs, I think let's end this with a very important and pertinent question, because no SaaS founder here would ever not think about raising funding at some point, right? Sure. So, yeah. and you've probably done it multiple times, be it in your earlier stint or this, and yeah. You would probably be the right person to ask this. What are some of the do's and don'ts, especially from a VC's mindset? From a pricing perspective, right? Because that's something that being on the other side, being in a corporate handling, SaaS startups and pricing. So this is something that we keep, telling folks. And your last point, especially on, customizing the service part plus the pricing, I think that is beautifully put. So I think, can you probably share, some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to pricing, and what are red flags from, the VC's angle?
Yeah, having high quality deals is very critical as far as VCs are concerned, right? When I say high quality deals, it means that very little customization. The agreement is good. It does not grandfather them for all the years to come. I know there's a discount, but that discount will expire after a year. So having good quality deals done is very critical, right? And it is not like everything is like 3 months free, and then after that they have a termination clause if they want. That is an example of a really bad deal, right? Like you say that you closed HP, but what essentially you have done is you have a signed agreement that says there is a pilot for 3 months that is free, and then at the end of 3 months they can walk away if they want to, right? That's an example of a bad deal. if a VC sees that, is like, how do I know HP is going to pay or not? Right? They haven't done even a single dollar so far, right? So that is one. The second thing is they would really look at the ACVs of your platform. If you are saying that I am going to put account executive and SDRs to scale my company to $1 million, which is the series, $1 million is what you need to raise Series A. So in the seed stage, if you say I'm going to put account executive and SDR, and then you go and say that, oh, by the way, my ACV is only $1,000, you are screwed, right? Because $1,000 cannot, the math will not work out. If you pay the account executive salary, SDR salary, the commissions, and the customer success, if you put all of that thing together, $1,000 ACV product will not work. So for VCs to look at your product, you have to say that the ACV has to be above $6,000 if you are going with an account executive or an SDR model. So aligning your go-to-market strategy with your pricing, ACV is very, very critical for them. Third thing is your upsell potential is super, super important. At stability for a B2B SaaS company, your revenue should always, the net new revenue that you gain a year, 30%, 20 to 30% should come from your existing customers. There is something called as a net revenue retention rate, which means out of your $100 that you have, somebody will churn and it comes down to $90, right? But then your existing customers, the rest 90% of your customers just paid another 30%. So your net revenue retention rate today is 120%. So 120% net revenue retention rate is very, very, very good. If you have 150%, I saw, what was the company that said 150%? I heard a CEO saying they have 150%. I forgot the name of the company, but somebody said that they have 150% net retention rate. Like, that's amazing. If you have that kind of retention rate, VCs are going to throw money your way. So I'd say that is the net revenue retention rate. Then, of course, your ability to package the product in a way to easily get the folks in hooked in that. Finally, not finally, but one of the other thing that comes to mind is being able to manage your churn, right? Your churn kills as B2B SaaS startup. So you have to be mindful that the money that you are getting upfront does not churn away after a year. So don't overcharge it a lot that the churn will be a lot. You have to find a balance between your initial payment and the churn percentage.
No, fully. I mean, thanks for bringing that last point, right? In terms of staying on top of a very important metric in terms of, understanding what is your revenue and what is your additional revenue that, your existing customers bring in, your new customers, and also accounting for the churn, right? So I think that from a VC perspective and your other 3 points on what do VCs see, I think would be very, very valuable for all the startups here. So broadly, I think, Arjun, we've covered all the questions that came in today, and I think such a serious topic, because a lot of Headstart keeps doing close to about 500 events a year, right? And this is definitely one topic that people run away from, right? Because it's important, at the same time it's very serious, right? It's intense. And this is a topic where you'll enjoy it only if you're a founder, or you really have a stake in it. Because otherwise, it is not one of those jazzy topics. It is something very, very intense. It can go very deep. And if you're not connected to pricing for your product in your venture, this goes all over the head. So I really loved hosting you for the last 1 hour, because it didn't seem like 1 hour. The way such an intense topic went so candid. In terms of opening up. So, first of all, thank you so much. But I'm not going to leave you without asking one, tricky question. If there is one, brand or one startup or one SaaS product that, you've referred to in your journey, in terms of, it could be the SaaS pricing page or the pricing landing page or the pricing model, where you felt, hey, they nailed the, the model. What could that be? And just allowing our folks to go back and refer to some of these pages.
There are so many.
I know it's a googly, but nothing like leaving it a spot at the end.
Yeah, no, I would. not in terms of my reference, right? But something that I think I really like. I would go back to the example of Slack. I think the way Slack grew had a lot to do with their pricing model and how they allowed people to start at zero amount up to 10,000 messages. And if you look at it, they have kept that gating factor for years and years, right? They haven't changed that gating factor even today, which means they got it right that early. When they were even a very small company, they got it absolutely right. And after 10,000 messages, the gating factors that they figured out, everything they have stuck on, right? It's not a reference for me because I don't run a product-led freemium kind of a model. I do a mid-market enterprise kind of a thing. So it's a different model as far as I am concerned. But I'm a fan of how they did it. That set the tone of product-led growth that gave the speed at which Slack grew. Oh my God, it's tremendous. And I would give a lot of credit to the pricing model and the gating factors they figured out. If you imagine, right, if Slack said that you have to pay $1 right from start, you wouldn't use it. But after using it enough, they said you have to pay $7 per person, you are fine. Right? Because they hooked you so well with that pricing model initially, zero until you get somewhere, right? So that, in my opinion, is I fascinated by the kind of quality that they showed.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I think the best part was, not just intense topics, intense concepts, but also a lot of examples, that we were able to bring for, our founders today. And thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. And I'm sure, looking at all the comments on the chat, folks are going to force or bully us to ensure that we have another session with you shortly, right? So. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot to all of you, for being around and asking so many questions, because if it's not interactive and engaging, I think, this wouldn't have been this much fun for us as well. So having said that, thank you so much. We're going to keep having a lot more, intense sessions over the month. So November is going to be a lot more specific topics that we keep having. And, we will definitely ensure, Ashish, that, Arjun keeps coming back. He is a head starter at heart, and he spends a lot of time, in terms of giving back to the community, right? So that's something that I would love to acknowledge, Arjun, as well. You've been giving a lot back to the community, a lot of hours. I think there's nothing more important than giving that valuable time back to the community, right? How much of money you give, but nothing like the learnings that we share. I think that's something that's very commendable. So thank you so much on that. And for the others, there are multiple workshops that are organized in the Saturdays that you have in November. So look at the HeadStart website for more details on the various workshops. A lot of them are very, very focused workshops. So look forward to a lot more intense sessions with each of you. And on the count, just one final thing on Intuit Circles. Since we've been partnering with them, Intuit Circles, you can check out the portal. Intuit Circles portal is, is a closed community for all startups in India, right? So a lot of content, a lot of engagement, a lot of, community stuff that happens on the portal. And for more, content and engagement, I would suggest you head to the Intuit Circles portal. It doesn't cost you anything. You just have to sign up and start engaging with fellow founders there. So thank you so much, all of you. Look forward to catching up next Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Gautam. Appreciate you. You are amazing to speak with.
Thank you so much for your time, Arjun.
Yeah.